Hey guys, so I thought I'd make a video on how to manage context limits with Claude Code, just because I think that when you're first getting started or you're trying to use Claude Code to build things, it can be a little bit annoying when it auto compacts and you haven't like given it proper structure yet, or it forgets things and things like that, right? It can be very frustrating and annoying when you're halfway through a task, it auto compacts, and then all of a sudden now it's just like it feels like it's lost intelligence and it doesn't understand what it's doing. So there's a couple of components to this, and I'll kind of show you how I structure it from my side. But yeah, so if we go into Claude Code, and the first thing that's really important that I learned recently from Jordan Crawford was to have a context bar. Because if you have no context bar, and you can see here, there's nothing here whatsoever. If you have no context bar whatsoever, you have zero understanding of where you are at as far as context goes in a particular session, right? So it doesn't show up right now, but if I just type in, this is just a demo to show how context works in a session. Cool. So you can see here context, right? And mine here already starts at 20%. Now it could probably be a little bit better, because I think what it's doing is it's loading in a whole bunch of the context that I have around my MD files and just different things within the project. I'm sure I could probably optimize this a little bit further, and start at like, I don't know, 0.5 or something, or 10% instead of 20%, but whatever, right? The point is that having this here allows you to just see as you go on in the session to see where you are as far as context goes. Now, you can set this up very easily by just quite literally telling Claude Code, I want to set up a context bar in my session like this, and you can customize it however you want to customize it. So mine, when it gets to 50%, it turns orange, and then when it gets to, I think, 80%, it turns red. Now, mine, when it gets to 85%, that's at the point at which it auto compacts, or it compacts from there, right? And you get this message at the side that says auto compact in 5% or 1% or whatever it is, right? And if you've worked on projects and you get to like that 1% and you're trying to save it or whatever, it's quite it's quite irritating when it compacts. So the best way is to keep track of how much context you're actually using. So the first thing is to set this up. And like I said, you just literally ask it to set it up. That's the first thing. The second thing is and this is again another rule I got from Jordan Crawford, which is if you are above 50 to 60% of the context window, don't start a new task or don't start like a new build or anything. So use the first up to 50%, 50, maybe 60% to work on have one focus, one task. Once you get past that 50, 60%, you can make tweaks to that thing, but don't start a new thing. If you then start a completely new thing from there, you'll need to just compact it. It might not have enough to build out the plan. I mean, it could probably have enough to build out the plan and everything, but usually what I'll do is I'll start a session, I'll build out a plan, and then once we've got that plan, I'll let it run. And then when it gets to 60, 70%, I'll then make sure that it's saved. All the stuff that is important is logged, and so that we don't have any context loss between this session and the next session. And then I will manually compact it, usually when it gets to 75% or something, so that then I compact it, I usually will get a prompt, and I will ask it to share a prompt with me and just say, I'd like to continue the session where we left off, please share a prompt. And then it will share a prompt, and I quite literally paste that in once I've compacted it, and I compact it manually. And then that means that after compaction, I'm in control. And that's the biggest thing, is having control of when the compaction is and having control of what is saved, logged, and remembered for additional context. Because what happens if it auto compacts, you have no control, and it just basically decides what it's going to use to continue the session in an efficient way once it's compacted the memory, right? So the goal here is to have control over the compaction. So what I will usually do is, like I said, when I get to, say, around 60%, I will make sure that I don't add new, like, big tasks, right? Anything that I do from, say, 60% onwards is just small things. Then if I want to start a new task or I want to change like quite a bit, then I will manually compact it. And in the next session, once it goes back down to a small amount of context, you can then build things back up again. And that means that now in that new session, you're continuing with the previous context, and then you're building with basically a much bigger, fresher context window, essentially. So that's another thing that I do. Another tip as well is to save checkpoints. So I basically set it up, and I can't remember if Claude does this automatically or not, or if you have to just tell it to basically do this, but I've got a chats/sessions log that every session I have, I can just say save checkpoint, and it will save all the important aspects of that conversation. And then when I get to the end of a conversation, I can basically just say, share a continuation prompt, save checkpoint, and then it will give me the prompt. I manually compact, and then in the next session, literally when I say manually compact, I just type in compact. It will then compact, and it will give it a second to compact. All right, obviously there's nothing to compact here. And then in the next session, I would just copy paste whatever is here, if this was the prompt, and I would paste this in. Once it's compacted and finished compacting, then I just press enter, and then it continues with what we had running before, basically taking the session notes and everything that we've had and built in the previous session, and then it will give me the prompt to continue. It says, read the session notes here, check the latest things, etc., and then that means that in the next session, I don't have any issue with it being more stupid. Basically, it's just as smart in the next session, which is pretty cool. So that's another thing. And then the final bit would be probably sub-agents. So a lot of times, and to actually use them, because I was actually confused on how to use them initially, but it's quite simple. You just type in, please use a sub-agent or something along those lines. But basically, a sub-agent essentially just works in the background outside of your main context. So if, for example, you have like 3 or 4 different tasks that you want to run, instead of running everything here in one session, your sub-agent would work in the background, and there'll usually be like a little thing down here that will say like one sub-agent is running or something along those lines. And basically it goes and does the research or does the task that you want in the background, and then it pulls any summary or any information that it's found and then pushes it back into the main context here, but it does it in a summarized format. So you're not having to call tools or anything like that will then use a lot of the context within this window. So it just basically works in the background, and you can have multiple working at the same time in the background, and then it will pull the information into the main session in a summarized view. So you're not using, so for example, just if I put use, how do I use sub-agents? Right. But it's just really useful because you don't have to really do anything other than just ask it, can you use a sub-agent for this particular task? And then it will just go and use the sub-agent in the background. It'll use very minimal context. And then when it pulls the summary, that will then go into the main chat. But because it's summarized information, it won't have had to have used as many tokens to be able to actually go and do the task itself, because it's doing that in the background. So all of these different things that it's doing, right? Or not that it's doing, but all of these different things together will help give you much better structure when building out your projects within Claude Code. So by using the context bar, making sure you keep on top of it in terms of, starting, like, don't start new tasks when you get to like 50, 60+%. Manually compacting things so you have more control over compaction, saving checkpoints, and continuation prompts, and then sub-agents as well. All of those things together will help you to have a more enjoyable experience when using Claude Code, because rather than it just automatically compacting and you losing information from your session, you will now be able to have a model that just continues in the next session with no context loss whatsoever. And it's been so useful because I used to get really frustrated at the fact that in every time it would compact, it would just get more stupid, basically. And it would, things that you've told it already, it would then forget about those things. But now with these methods, it's allowed me to now be able to use it across sessions without having to really worry about the context limits, because I know that as long as I stay in control of them and stay disciplined with it, then you're basically absolutely fine, and it won't ever lose like that level sort of intelligence, essentially. So I hope this video has helped. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye.